Welcome. Today we're going to be taking a look at foreign keys and how we can actually create them using Oracle SQL. Just as a quick reminder, foreign key is a field in a table that refers to another row entirely in another asterisk included table by using its primary key. And this is used to show the relationships across tables. Again, that asterisk is because you could possibly have a hierarchical relationship inside a table, and so your foreign key is actually a reference to your actual self table. And you can see that when you're talking about things, say for example, like course and a prerequisite or employee and manager. That's a great way you can see for that to happen. Now, when creating a foreign key structure, these can be created at table creation. However, I prefer to do it after all the tables are created to have clean and regularly updatable code. Because again, we want to remember that we write code for humans to read and understand before we even worry or consider the compiler itself. So humans first, then the computer. We use the alter command because we're going to modify the structure of the table as part of the creation of a foreign key, and so that's something we have to work with. And the best practice is you want to create those foreign keys after all tables are created and before any data is inserted, so you can make sure that as you do those inserts, that they have the correct dependencies already defined. So it's like, oh, I've got these values right here, and I can make sure that the structure is ready before I worry about doing anything else, that we don't have to have possibly some insert or modification updates. So this way we have a good stable data as we go through this. Again, another reason why normalization is such a key thing to do before we actually worry about the structure. So the foreign key creation steps. So the first thing we have to do is we have to change the existing table structure, like I just said. Then we add a constraint to actually talk about this. We can notice this when we're actually working with the data. We name the foreign key field, we reference the external table and its field that we're talking to, and then we have optional triggers that may or may not exist depending on what we're working with. So that's the actual steps we use to actually do the foreign key. Let's go ahead and take a look at the syntax for the structure. The foreign key syntax, as you can see right here with the alter table with table name, we add a constraint, and the constraint naming convention that I use the FK prefix, indicates a foreign key. One of the few times it's okay to use some jargon because it's just right there in the actual prefix, and then referencing table, underscores, and then source table to separate those values apart so I can know exactly what I'm talking with. Again, we use underscores instead of spaces, and we do not use the camel case, we use the snake case convention as we worked with this. Then we have the foreign key structure and then the field name inside parens. So again, we use the parens around that to identify it. If you don't have the parens, it's not going to compile, so make sure you have those parens there. And it references the other table name and the primary key of that thing. So you want to make sure you have that directly related. And of course, we end with our great friend, the semicolon. On the right-hand side, we have that same structure right there, but we have one of those optional triggers. So those optional triggers are on delete with no action, cascade, or set null. And so those are things we could possibly have within that. In this case, I'm using the cascade, which means when I delete this, all the child references to this will also be deleted. That's a design decision, something you should definitely look at as you're looking at the actual data you're working with, because sometimes you actually want to have that happen. The on delete no action is the default, which we don't have to specify, which is why I have it over there on the left. That's enough to have a viable foreign key inside our structure. But again, this is an implementation decision, so you want to talk about the people who will be working with that data and what kind of data you're actually removing when you design the on delete options for that. And we'll take care of that. The set null option would be like, oh, on delete set null, and so all the child references would be set to null, and that could be then handled with an update table statement, possibly be a procedure to do all the modifications that can update that if necessary. So you can do any references for that hierarchical structure. So here we have an example of creating and working with a foreign key. On the left-hand side, we have the tables that are involved with this. So you have create table cells with the cells ID as the primary key of that table. Export ID is a number 50, not null, and descriptions of bar chart 2 of 100 size with other fields not shown. And then I have create table exporters where all I'm listing is the export destination code, also a number, primary key, and other fields not shown. Notice that we have an exact match between export ID and export destination code because those are the values we'll be working with this on that. And so I'm going to alter table cells. I'm going to add the constraint FK exporter cells because again I have the foreign key prefix, then exporters, the table I'm talking to, cells, the table I'm currently in, and then the foreign key keyword, and then the export ID identifying the field inside the table I'm currently working with, and then references, exporters, the other table, and then the export destination code, the field name in that other table. Again, you want to make sure you realize you don't have to have an exact match of names because you may not have actually created those other tables, so you have to realize that there's other references that may happen with that. But this is the idea of how you can actually create a foreign key in a data set and have that work. I hope this is helpful. Cheers and see you next time. Have a good day. Bye-bye.